Oh my God, hello everybody. I'm gonna take my mask off. I wear it normally. I'm taking it off because we're going on a little walk here. Chill out. I'm gonna be taking you guys on a little walk of Central Park today. We're actually at 59th and 5th, and we're gonna be walking through Central Park. It's gonna be a good one. I've done this tour a million times, usually for money, but you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna give this one to you guys and see what you think. I'm just gonna walk around, but anyways, we're walking here from 59th and 5th. You guys ready to go? Let's do it. All right, so we're walking from 59th and 5th. This behind me here is the William Tecumseh Sherman statue. It's gilded bronze, not in gold, but he was a very famous general in the Civil War of the United States, which started in 1861 between the North and the South. He actually helped turn the tide in favor of the North. With his scorched earth policy, he would go into the South, defeat the military, and then burn the nearest city to the ground. Like, for example, in the movie Gone with the Wind, you guys remember that? City of Atlanta burning down? That was him. We're gonna cross here, even though we don't have the crossing sign, not get hit by a car. And we're gonna go into Central Park. It's gonna be pretty sick. 59th and 5th is where kind of the park begins. So the park stretches from 59th Street in the south all the way to 110th Street in the north, okay? And then it goes from 5th Avenue in the east to 8th Avenue in the west. It is 843 acres. Wow, that's huge, right? Well, it's not the biggest in New York, believe it or not. In fact, there are multiple parks bigger than this one. And Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx is actually almost 3 times the size of this. What makes this one so great is where it's located. This is located smack in the middle of Manhattan, which is the most densely populated county in the country. Oh man, it looks like something's going on here. Look at this, there's actually a crime scene, it looks like. We're gonna have to take a detour. Yeah, let's go this way. This park is normally pretty safe. Right now, it looks like something happened. So the park, this is a great way to show the park. There's a crime scene right here, all the caution tape. Welcome to New York. We're going to be walking through the southern portion of the park because in 1858, when it was opened, the park was called Central Park, but it was not in the center of the city. It was located way out of the city. It was a big deal to go to the city. You had to get on a carriage and plan a trip and pack a lunch and dinner or whatever. It was a big deal. Like, all right, kids, get all your stuff. We're going to Central Park, you know? Let's pack the carriage and go. Today, you can just kind of walk through it, like whenever you feel like it. So because of that, because everything, there was no mass transit yet. It was located in the north of the city. They weren't going to put all the coolest things in the north end of the park. They put them all in the south. So all the stuff you're going to recognize from movies and posters and all that stuff is located in the south of the park. But I think the coolest thing about Central Park is that everything you see, it looks like we're just walking through nature, right? That's the idea. We're walking through nature. It's all these like trees and fields and water. Everything was put here according to a plan. Everything, from the bodies of water to the trees, everything. Which means we're walking through a living work of art. Isn't that amazing? Ah, it's beautiful, makes you just want to cry. So that's a kind of cool thing. It's like walking through a watercolor painting. When you're at the museum, you're just looking at these paintings, you're like, I want to go there. Well, you're here right now. So we're walking next to the pond here, and you're gonna see lots of like ducks and animals. The area is stocked with turtles and fish. In fact, like a couple years ago, there was the mandarin duck passed through here on its little migration. It was kind of weird because it doesn't normally pass through here, and there were tons of like photographers, everything, taking pictures. It's another thing, a big bird watching park. In fact, Audubon Society, I think, has recorded like 280 plus species of birds that have passed through Central Park. It makes it a big bird watcher's destination. You go to like the Great Lawn, and you'll see, you know, people out there with their huge lenses taking pictures of birds and stuff. I imagine they're taking pictures of birds. I mean, I guess they could be looking into people's windows with those things. But, you know, there's all that birds in New York and perverts, so who knows which one it is. There's the Gapstow Bridge. It's a very famous bridge here in Central Park. It's made out of a special stone that I'm going to talk about here in a second, but it's got a great view of Midtown from there. Very popular place to propose to your girlfriends. Yeah, so I got to just find someone to propose to up there, that's all. That's a tall order. But yeah, great, like, Instagrammable spot. A lot of people go and take their little Instagram stuff. I gotta walk straight. I feel like I slouch too much. And also keep in mind, this is just a walkthrough. This isn't a complete tour because, you know, it's gonna cost you. Also too, we'd be here for 3 hours. We could be here for 3 hours. So this is the pond. It's one of the few bodies of water, 7 bodies of water, all of them man-made here in Central Park. People ask if this is the land, what the land of Manhattan used to look like before the city was here, and it is not. This was completely created, completely made to look like it was, but it was not. In fact, this used to be marshland. So the story of Central Park and the history goes, by the way, the pond, I don't know if you recognized it from movies like Home Alone 2, that's where he first encounters the The pigeon lady. You guys remember the pigeon lady? Still looking for my pigeon lady. No, I'm just kidding. All right, anyways, we're gonna keep walking here, and you're gonna see a special type of stone I'm gonna talk about because it has to do a lot with the history of the park. So what happened was in the 1800s, like the 1820s and 30s and 40s, New York City started to increase in population very quickly because of immigration. Immigrants were coming through in huge numbers, and it was making it very densely populated, crowded. And so the city kind of got like tense. There was a lot of problems between the rich and the poor, a lot of crowding and filth and disease. So in 1844, a guy named William Cullen Bryant, namesake of Bryant Park. Oh, we did that on a Midtown tour. Oh, here, click here to see the Midtown tour. But anyways, he calls for publicly in an editorial in his newspaper, the New York Evening Post, today's New York Post, he calls publicly for a Central Park in 1844, a park for everyone. So it begins this movement, and people start pushing for a park for everyone. And it necessitated a movement because on the grid plan of New York, which was implemented in 1811, which is the reason the streets are all numbered, starting at Houston all the way to the north end of the island, because of that grid, on that grid, there was no parks, believe it or not. Also, check this out. This is kind of cool. This is usually the skating rink, the ice skating rink in the winter, which is coming. Winter's coming, baby. Ooh, buckle up, buckle up. But I don't know if you recognize that too from Home Alone 2. Also from Serendipity, the ridiculous ending of Serendipity. I don't know if you guys ever seen that movie. It's like this ridiculously melodramatic rom-com. I think it's like the target demographic is depressed people. It's like, oh, it makes me sad. It's like a ridiculous ending where the glove flies. Anyways, so this movement begins to create this park, and they start pushing for land for this park. The man who was probably going to design it was named Andrew Jackson Downing. He pushes for more land because initially it was only going to be 150 acres, a fraction of what this is, and they get more land. The problem is he dies. He died in 1853. He died in a boating accident on the Hudson River. He was actually racing his boat, and it overheated, and he jumped in to save people, and he drowns at 36 years old, extremely young. Extremely young. 36 is so young. And he dies. So now the question is, who's going to design this park? Well, they looked like they were favoring his engineer at the time to design it. So this man, his assistant, named Calvert Vaux, saw an opportunity. He's like, I want to design this park, but they're not going to give it to me because I'm a nobody. So he comes up with the idea of having a contest. He opens it as a contest. The city just says, that's a great idea, Calv. Let's open this as a contest. And he's like, yes, all right, still got a chance. So then he recruits Frederick Law Olmsted as his partner, and they submit a plan among 30-something other plans, and theirs is chosen. And Frederick Law Olmsted was kind of like the man about town of the group. Everyone knew him. He was popular, politically connected. He'd written for the New York Times, traveled all Europe. So they submit the Greensward plan, and it's chosen. And this is the Greensward plan. The idea behind the Greensward plan is basically using the existing contours of the land and making it seem as if everything just kind of came out of nature, right? And the existing contours of the land are what we're walking on right now. This stone is called Manhattan schist. Schist, with an S. You get it? We're standing in a big pile of schist. Now look at me, I'm standing in schist. Oh my God, I'm full of schist. Oh, that's so great. Okay, anyways, kids love that stuff. I can't even continue. They're like, schist, they keep saying it the whole time. But this is Manhattan schist. This is the bedrock of Manhattan. This is all over the island of Manhattan. This is the bedrock. This is what like the skyscrapers build their foundations on. This is why this island hasn't just floated off into the water. But this is what was here before. And they had to blast through it, build around it, but it's all over the park because this is what was here. In fact, there was only one real settlement in this whole area, and that was called Seneca Village over near what is today the Natural History Museum, and it was mostly African American and Irish, and they were booted right out. That's a whole nother video, but here you can get a good look at the ice skating rink. Pretty cool. And we're on a nice little lookout point. But this is what was here. So the Greensward plan is implemented, and the park opens in 1858. It's continued to work on all the way until 1872. It's continually worked on. It's still kind of a work in progress. But the whole idea is that it's a scene out of nature. It's supposed to feel like you're in nature. And like it's like a house. Think of a house with different rooms. The whole idea behind the whole house, the general theme of it is nature, is being one with nature, this communion with nature. This is the mid-1800s. This is back when naturalism was a thing. People like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau were talking about return to nature. The essence of man is one with nature and God. And that was kind of the idea. So that's the general theme. But then within that house, you have different rooms. So there are different parts of the park that have different functions and different kind of themes, etc. So that's kind of like a little way that the park is different, and they meant for it to be that way. So over here to the left, we're going to walk through a little area known as the dairy. Look at this, me and Phil are so seamless. Like I just crossed right in front of him, me and Phil are a good team. This is called the Dairy. This was actually built in 1870. You can see the cool little, I guess the architecture there. It looks like a little mountain house or something. But this was actually built as a dairy where they were actually going to milk cows right here, provide drinking milk for the kids in the city. That's a true thing. Isn't that crazy? But they didn't do it. It's not done now today, obviously, and it's actually just the visitor center. But this kind of showcases something about the park that I wanted to bring up, and that is that it's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving as the city evolves, as humanity evolves. So certain elements of it that, you know, were considered useful or necessary back then are not anymore. So you have things like the dairy. You have things also like the zoo, which we just passed there on the right. You couldn't really see much, so don't worry. Don't start saying, I want to go in the zoo. And the idea is that these things are kind of added or taken away as needed. But things like that. So the zoo was actually an afterthought. What happened was the actual designers of the park didn't like the idea of caging animals, so they said no specifically to a zoo. But what happened was, as the park opened in 1858, everyone from New York, especially the rich, got so excited about having this park in their city that they started sending animals from their travel to the park to put them in the park. Like, here's a bear, put this in the park. And people were like, okay. So they ended up putting them just in this menagerie next to the offices of the park that are at the Arsenal, which is actually an arsenal built in 1848. And that expanded until in 1934, Robert Moses, very famous man, we'll talk about him in a different video, don't worry, wink, he created a zoo. Also too, we're walking over another example of something that kind of plays into the themes. This is one of the 4 traverse roads of Central Park. It's blasted through all that schist, and it's basically traffic. You can barely see it or feel it because they blasted it as a tunnel so you wouldn't feel it. And the purpose was so it doesn't interrupt your enjoyment of the park. You can kind of just come and not be interrupted by all the horse crap, because that's what it was back then. And you can just kind of, hang out. So there's 4 of those. This is before cars, kind of visionary, that they were able to figure that out. Also, you'll notice a lot of arches in Central Park because, they don't want you to stop for everyone every 2 seconds. You walk right under them, they walk right over you. Oh man, this is crazy, isn't that amazing? Over here to the left, you have Sheep Meadow, which is another example of this. Oh, walk right in front of you there. Look at that, Phil. Oh, look at this. We're just a nice little tango we're doing. That is the Sheep Meadow. It's named Sheep Meadow because it was actually built as a meadow for grazing sheep. There are parts where there is 4 inches between the grass and the actual stone underneath. They made it completely from scratch, and they actually kept sheep there until the 1930s, when people were starting to steal them and eat them because the Great Depression wasn't exactly fun. And, that's why we don't have nice things. So they turned the Sheep Meadow into kind of like the beach of Central Park. Today it's amazing because people are just laying out, they're throwing the frisbee, tossing the bee. Yeah, I know I know the lingo. Flick the bee. So they're out there, playing beach volleyball, all kinds of stuff. And then the sheep fold, the barn and the area where they kept the sheep, is today Tavern on the Green. Look at that, very fancy little restaurant. While working on my sick tan in Sheep Meadow, I spotted an elusive New York legend, so I thought I'd have a chat with him. I'm here with a legend in New York. This man, his name is Poetry today, formerly known as Wendall. How you doing today, Wendall?
I'm great, man. I have you screaming to your mic. I'm feeling so great.
What's your favorite thing about Central Park?
About Central Park? It's not the forest. It's not the wilderness. It's not a lot of wildlife coming through here, but you got to kind of like reminisce and go back. It kind of brings you. It's not the suburbs. It's not like they're going to build me an apartment right there or a house or anything.
You got to pay for that, that's for sure. You got to pay a lot.
Maybe we can turn that into my apartment. What is that?
That's a Tavern on the Green.
I'd live there.
I'd live there too. What's your favorite thing about New York City?
There should be a little something for everybody. I'm a designer. They have the fashion industry. There's an architect. They have another block to build. There's a carpenter. There's a.
New York has something for everybody.
They do. The parting words was, be yourself, but be me too.
Be yourself, but be Poetry, formerly known as Wendall too.
Right on.
Right on.
Peace.
So now we're walking into one of the more famous parts of the park. Now the whole idea is the park is supposed to feel out of nature. It's not supposed to feel like it was made by man. This is the kind of one exception. This is the Central Park Mall. This is probably the more famous part of the park, leading up to Bethesda Terrace, which are the 2 most photographed and recognizable. Keep that in mind too, over 200 films have shot in Central Park. This is the most filmed location in the entire world, period. I could go down the list of just the movies that have shot here. Home Alone 2, Wall Street, Big Daddy, Enchanted, When Harry Met Sally, it just goes on and on. Avengers, Spider-Man, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the Central Park Mall. You may recognize this from Wall Street, Enchanted, when they're doing the whole dance at the beginning. That's how you know. I think that's how the song. You see the tiles here on ground. You see these statues, this is kind of cool. This one here is Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, the man who discovered America in 1492. You know, he discovered that huge landmass inhabited by hundreds of millions of people, that guy. And then over here you have, you know, this famous author, famous writer. His name's Bill Shakespeare. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him. He wrote some stuff. I think he wrote the Bible or something, I don't know. But very famous playwright. You can see this is a kind of interesting statue. A couple things about it. One, back then they had to raise money for all the statues, and the way they raised money for this was the most famous Shakespearean actor in his day was named Edwin Booth. You bet your ass, sister. Anyways, she said he's showing off a lot of skin, but this was actually raised money. Edwin Booth, the most famous Shakespearean actor of his day, put on a play with his brothers, Junius and John Wilkes Booth. Julius Caesar. John Wilkes Booth ended up being more famous than his brother because he assassinated Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States, in 1865. Another thing you'll notice is that the sculptor, John Quincy Adams Ward, chose to give him a huge forehead, just completely bald, because back then they actually believed in a thing called phrenology, and phrenology is the study of the shape of your skull and head to dictate certain things about your personality. One of the things they believed was the more forehead you had, the more intelligent you were, more sophisticated. So he's got a big old dome over there. Only problem is that over there is another statue known as the Indian Hunter, made by John Quincy Adams Ward, a Native American hunting. His forehead way down here. That's not that politically correct, but shows you what they thought back then. Also interesting fact, phrenology is where the phrase highbrow and lowbrow culture comes from. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm giving you guys some good stuff, man. This is all free, great stuff. Someone in the last video tried to say, it's not technically free, you're getting views for it. Well, I'll tell that to my landlord when I tell him, hey, I got your rent and views right here. That being said, I'll put my Venmo and PayPal if you want to give a donation. I gotta make a Patreon. I don't know what I'm doing. So this is the mall lined by these beautiful American elm trees. Actually, you can't go in here, you can't walk around here because the American elm trees are very susceptible to Dutch elm disease, which you know, has killed off a lot of the trees here in the country. So you can't go through there. But it creates this really cool canopy because they're actually known for their canopy. Oh, another interesting story about that statue. When they put the Shakespeare statue, it used to face to the east. In fact, all the writing is on the back of the statue. What happened was, shortly after they put that there, the Columbus statue was put over there to the west of it. And the people who put the Columbus statue were all excited. They're like, that's great, okay, cool. But then they looked and they're like, wait, the Shakespeare statue is giving its back to our statue. That's a huge insult. So they started complaining, and the city's like, what do you want us to do? We can't just move that pedestal. That thing's in there. They said, no, you can't move the pedestal, but you can turn the statue on top of the pedestal around. So the city was like, okay. So they did, and now the statue is turned around, and there's no writing on the front of the statue, it's all on the back. Kind of weird, but the moral of the story is, if you're a New Yorker, always complain. You never know what you'll get. All right, a little bit of jazz. Not a huge fan of jazz. I shouldn't say that out loud. People bite your head off if you say you don't like jazz. They're like, what do you like Britney Spears? I don't know, I don't get it that much. So Central Park Mall, this is kind of cool, is that it was built like as a straight line leading up to Bethesda Terrace, which is really kind of just the heart of the park, and I'll show you that here in a second. But the idea is that this is kind of like the religious experience of Central Park. Here we're at the cathedral, right? So this is the cathedral. This is the nave leading up to the altar, which is Bethesda Terrace. And that's why it obviously is man-made. The rest of the park is pretty wild. They're supposed to look wild. Over here to the right is an area known as Rumsey Playfield, which actually used to be a casino. A casino here is like a fancy place where people ate and spent a lot of money on food and whatever, very show-offy place. In fact, Jimmy Walker, a former mayor of New York, used to hang out there a lot. And one of his old rivals and a person who didn't really like him too much, named Robert Moses, in the 1930s says we're getting rid of this thing because it doesn't fall in line with what the park is supposed to be. So they got rid of that, and today it's Rumsey Playfield, and Rumsey Playfield is where they do the concerts in Central Park. So it's a really cool place where you pay at least back then it was like $30-35, and you come here and see a concert, all these famous bands like Counting Crows, which is one of my guilty pleasures, to be quite honest. And you pay $30 and you see it. It ends fairly early because all the people who live around here have a lot of money and they don't want to deal with it. And what's up, man? How you doing? And then you can watch your favorite band play while the sun sets in Central Park. Pretty sick. Good date spot. So that's Rumsey Playfield there, and then you see the band shell here, which is getting worked on. The band shell was actually built in the early 1900s as a place where bands could play, and this is where they used to have the concerts. Not so much anymore. This is where high school bands play when they're here for the Thanksgiving Day parade. stuff like that. Lots of street performers here too. It's funny how the street performers work too, because street performers have to compete for spots, right? So there's spots that are better than others. So the real popular spots here in Central Park, they work very like closed off. Either the city regulates them or there's some almost like mafia-like control of them. Like there's a group of artists that use it and then they regulate who does it and who doesn't. This is also, because it's a straight line, was considered kind of the statuary of Central Park. All the statues are put here in this area. Once again, we're only going to be going to about 72nd. The park goes up to 1/10, but we're only going to 72nd because there's not really time. Okay, I don't have 4 hours to burn. We could walk the whole park, but like I said before, all the stuff you're recognizing for movies and things happen around here. And then we're going to be going now in a second to the most recognizable part of the entire park, which is Bethesda Terrace. That looks exhausting. Good Lord, this guy is really crushing those drums. It's making me tired just watching it. I'll give this guy a buck. Looks like there's some kind of like walk here. Looks like it's a protest, climate, looks like a climate protest of what's going on in Brazil and the Amazon. Yeah, it's a pretty lively park. This is where people come to do everything. But New York is dead. There's no one out in New York. It's a dead city. Look how dead it is. There's no one here. Get the hell out of here. So we're walking down to Bethesda Terrace. We're crossing over here. And you're gonna see a really cool view. This area was designed throughout the 1860s, which, by the way, don't forget, after the park was open, shortly after, we entered into the Civil War. And Vaux and Olmsted actually had different roles in that Civil War, so they were very busy and they were very kind of scattered. So Jacob Ray Mould, one of the assistants, actually helped design a lot of this area. You may recognize this from Avengers, one of the, I don't know which one, Avengers, the first one of the 20 Avengers movies there are. I don't know how you could keep watching those things, to be quite honest. I mean, after like the first two, you're like, okay, I get it. Anyways, this is Bethesda Terrace. You can see the fountain there. That fountain, angel of the water. You can see in the back the lake. It's a man-made lake. You can kind of drain it like a bathtub if you wanted to. Over on the other side is the Ramble, which is kind of like the woods of Central Park. You go there and you can get lost. You're just like, whoa, what the hell's going on? Because you can't see out. You feel like you're in North Carolina or something. Very dangerous back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Not a place you want to be. To be quite honest, not a place you still want to be at night. That being said, the park is fairly safe. It closes every night at 1 a.m., reopens at 5 a.m. Almost zero violent crime here, except for that humongous crime scene we saw earlier today. I don't know what that was though. So this actual piece was designed by a woman named Emma Stebbins. It was commissioned for the 25-year anniversary of the opening of the Croton Aqueduct, which used to have its receiving reservoir here in Central Park. The Croton Aqueduct was the first source of clean drinking water in New York City history. So it was a huge deal. Remember I said about all the disease and stuff going on here? Well, it was a very welcome addition. In fact, the New York Public Library is sitting on what used to be the distributing reservoirs. That's right, another sick plug for the same video that I was talking about before, the Midtown video. But you can see here underneath this area here is the arcade. This is this is where the Gossip Girl finale was. Oh my God, the series finale of Gossip Girl? This is where Blair and Chuck got married. I don't know if you recognize that. This is Ransom, the movie Ransom, when the kid gets kidnapped here. Home Alone 2. Had scenes here, I mean, you name it, they've shot in this park. Really beautiful. And people often ask, like, what do they do when they shoot in the park? Well, you got to close down stuff. Otherwise, you do what we're doing. You just walk around. You hire Phil and you walk around. Phil shot all the Avengers movies were shot by Phil, my cameraman Phil. He shot every single one of them. But here you have the lake too, and you can rent boats and you can actually rent gondolas, take gondola rides. And the original gondoliers here trained with the gondoliers in Venice, believe it or not. Italy. And then over there's the Low Boathouse, which you might recognize from Sex and the City. And well, people like to sing, that's good. That's kind of nice. I should start singing. Maybe go out there and just start singing Country Roads. Take Me Home, Country Roads. It's my go-to karaoke song. That's a little freebie for you. If you're at a karaoke and you're always like, what song should I sing? I don't want to sing what everyone else sings, but I want to sing something that get people excited. Take Me Home, Country Roads by John Denver. Sleeper hit, I promise. Also, too, it's a beautiful area, this whole area, but I've done tours of Central Park for a few years now, and 13 times in just this area where we are right now, I've seen people get proposed to in person. 13 times. In fact, one time we were around that fountain, and all of a sudden a guy got on one knee, and he turns his girlfriend around to look up on the overlook that we were on earlier, and all his friends were standing there with the words, "Will you marry me?" In signs. And the whole place went nuts. It was a packed summer day. She said no. She didn't say no. But obviously at that point, you gotta say yes. Even if you don't want to marry the guy, you gotta say yes and be like, we'll talk about it in the car. Yeah, sure. Over here, you're gonna see the Bow Bridge here in a second, one of the original bridges of Central Park, cast iron bridge designed by Calvert Vaux himself. Very beautiful. You may recognize this from Spider-Man, when Peter Parker and Mary broke up and they walked on different sides of the bridge. This is also gonna be Cherry Hill that we're gonna be walking on here in a second. Cherry Hill, called that because of all the cherry blossoms that come out in late April, early May. And then this is an entrance here to the Ramble that we were talking about earlier. Very nice little music there. I'll get them with some money when we come back around with B-roll. A little insight into how the sausage is made. We do one quick walkthrough, then I go back, get some B-roll, and then I'm done. And over here you can start seeing the houses and buildings from Central Park West. Actually, I was gonna do a video about Central Park West today, but I said, you know what? I'm gonna do Central Park, it's too nice of a day. The parks in New York all increase the land value around them, and Central Park is no exception now. One of the reasons why Central Park is so nice is because it's taken care of by what's called the Central Park Conservancy, which is a private organization that makes most of its money off of donations, so 85%. And those donations come from people who live around here. They're investing in their park. And you can donate benches. In fact, the benches are $10,000 a pop if you want to donate or dedicate one of those. And you can also fish here. You got to catch and release. So you can't just stand out here and just like start filleting fish and stuff. I love that. Can you hear that, Phil? Good. He's talking about riding steel horses. On a steel horse I ride, wanted, dead or alive. I think that was Bon Jovi sitting there, actually. He looks like shit, but I think that was him. So you can see some of the more famous buildings here, too. You see the Beresford, where Jerry Seinfeld lives. San Remo, Bono has a penthouse there. Demi Moore put her apartment there on the market a few years ago for $75 million. I think it ended up selling for like $45 million. Over here we have a little fountain here. Is one of the inspirations for the fountain in the TV show Friends. The main inspiration is over in front of the Plaza Hotel. So this used to be a carriage turnaround. When carriages would come, they'd come here and park their carriages and turn around and head back the other way. Still carriages here in Central Park, but that's one of the things, again, they're trying to change. Some people don't like the idea of horses, being treated the way they are. They work them pretty hard. A couple horses have passed out from heat exhaustion. A couple have been hit by cars. It's a big problem. So they're pushing to get rid of them. Whatever, some things change. I don't think it's the worst idea. Here you'll see a cool little statue called the Falconer. This Irish dude kind of commissioned this piece after a statue he saw in Italy. Falcon, peregrine falcon. The peregrine falcon makes its home here in New York. You'll see the peregrine falcon here. I talked about this in my East Village video. Sick plug again. yeah, good. Click here, wherever. But the peregrine falcon makes its home here. Another bird that you can just see here. It'll just swoop down and park itself here. And like I said before, that bird could tear your face off. It's really cute to just see hanging out next to you. And that's the falconer statue right there. And then we're going to be walking over here to the west, passing through a very famous part of the park known as Strawberry Fields. Oh my God, Strawberry Fields. And here you'll see a little kiosk with a map of the park, and you'll be able to see the amount that we've covered and haven't covered. So just to give you an idea, this is Central Park. We started here and we're ending here. There's still all of that. So not a whole lot, but this is where a lot of the famous stuff is located. And over here you have a statue of a man named Daniel Webster. Daniel Webster is credited with being like the guy who invented the political oratory speech. He's a former Secretary of State, he's a former senator, and he was like the political orator, just like giving all these fancy inspirational speeches. This is back in like the 1850s when the country was kind of tearing apart over the issue of slavery in the western states, the expanding country. He believed in the compromise and letting them decide what they want to do. Some abolitionists didn't believe in that, and other people didn't believe in that. That's what eventually tore the country apart. Civil War. That's what happens. So now we're walking into an area known as Strawberry Fields, which is dedicated to the memory of John Lennon. You guys ever heard of him? I don't know, you young kids maybe just be like, oh, who is that? Is he like Justin Bieber? I don't know. Yeah, he's like Justin Bieber if he had just a little more talent. Just a little more talent. But he has problems too. But anyways, John Lennon used to live at the Dakota, and he was actually murdered there. We'll talk about that when we get there. But we'll talk about that. And we're walking in now, and it was opened in 1985. When he was murdered in 1980. We'll talk about that when we get out there. But this was opened in 1985. It's a quiet zone, so you're going to hear people singing with amplifiers and stuff. It's also shaped like a teardrop, just to kind of remind you that it's sad that he died. So this area is named Strawberry Fields because of the song Strawberry Fields. You know the song that goes like, Strawberry Fields forever. That was pretty good off the cuff. Come on, give me some credit. But he named the song Strawberry Fields after an area in Liverpool, England, where he used to frequent as a child. It was an orphanage. Today it's a Salvation Army. He used to go there and just kind of contemplate nature in the woods and all that stuff, right? But this is how he used this area of the park. Him and Yoko Ono would come here with their young son, and they would sit by the lake we just walked by, and they would hang out here a lot. So they named this Strawberry Fields after he died at Yoko Ono's pushing for that reason. Check this out. This is the signage of all the countries that have donated to the area here. You can see there Nicaragua. That's right. You can see Nicaragua there. Cool country. That's where my parents are from. I'm Nicaraguan American. First generation, baby. You'll see here also too that all those countries donated different parts of this area, money, whatever. But one of the countries that donated was Italy. And Italy, specifically the city of Naples, which donated a mosaic modeled after a mosaic in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii that was destroyed by Mount Vesuvius. This one, however, says Imagine in the middle because of the song Imagine, by John Lennon, which he actually wrote partly at the Dakota here. But you can see it, and normally right now this area is packed. You can barely walk through here. But right now, not so much because no tourists. Go figure. But one of the things they were toying with doing with this part of the park before they decided to do this was to actually create a memorial to Bing Crosby. He's the American crooner that sang the song White Christmas. You guys know that song? Like, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know. That was really good. Come on, give me some credit. But anyways, here's a little bit of trivia. That song was written by Irving Berlin, who was an immigrant through Ellis Island, who also wrote the song God Bless America. An immigrant wrote the song God Bless America, and don't you forget it. Also too, another piece of trivia. That song, #1 selling single of all time, White Christmas. You're welcome. Next time you're in a bar and you guys are doing barroom trivia and they ask you what the #1 selling singles of all time is, and you say White Christmas, you're gonna remember this face, you hear me? It's not Thriller or Welcome to the Jungle, it's White Christmas. And we are here now on 72nd and Central Park West, and you can get a good shot here of the Dakota building, one of the more storied apartment buildings in all of New York City. This was built here in 1884. Edward Clark was the man who developed it. He was the head of the Singer Sewing Machine Company. He wanted to make a rich person's kind of apartment complex, and that was kind of revolutionary at the time because rich people didn't really live in apartments yet. And also, there was nothing out here. Like, in fact, people made fun of him about building an apartment all the way out here in 1884 because they would say, dude, if you're gonna build all the way out there, you might as well build in the Dakota Territory. Which, by the way, the Dakota Territory was a part of the United States where no one lived. It's still a part of the United States where no one lives. But anyways, he's like, you know what, I'm gonna show you guys. I'm gonna name it the Dakota and we'll see who gets the last laugh. So he puts it here in 1884, it becomes a huge hit, and then shortly after, other ones sprouted up. But this was kind of the original. So many rich and famous people live there. People like who have lived there in the past: Boris Karloff, Judy Garland, Lauren Bacall, John Madden, Geraldo Rivera, Roberta Flack, and most importantly is John Lennon, who lived up there in the corner penthouse with Yoko Ono, who still lives there actually. I walk by Yoko Ono all the time here. And on December 8th, 1980, he was actually assassinated right there at this entrance that you can see. A man named Mark David Chapman came here from Hawaii with the intent of killing his longtime idol, right? So he parks it out there, December 8th, 1980, at like 8 in the morning, waits all day, and it's not until about 5:30-ish that John Lennon finally comes out with Yoko Ono. In fact, that morning he was doing a famous photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz. The famous photo where he's naked, draped over Yoko Ono, was done the morning he was killed. He comes down, sees Mark David Chapman. It's not weird. There was tons of paparazzi and fans there all the time anyway. And all Mark David Chapman can do is give him a copy of Double Fantasy, which was his most recent album. He signs it, gives it back to it, and says, "Is there anything else you want from me?" And Mark David Chapman says, no. So he gets away. He doesn't come back till about 10:45 p.m. By that time, all the other fans and paparazzi were gone. Yoko Ono walks in first. John Lennon walks in next, says hi, and hey, what's up? And walks in. Mark David Chapman gets his composure, turns around, says, "Hey, John." John starts turning around. He fires 5 shots, hits him 4 times in the back, and kills him in the entrance there, pretty much. He's taken to Roosevelt Hospital where he's pronounced dead. In fact, one of the doctors said in tending to him, they weren't able to process the severity of the situation until afterwards. He said he sat down on a bench in the hospital to rest, and he heard the song All My Lovin' by the Beatles on the hospital radio, and he said he collapsed crying because it was so sad, and he realized the importance of that moment. The following week, they had vigils here, thousands of people every single night, culminating on December 14th in the mall where we were earlier, where over 100,000 people showed up. Pretty sad. And then in 1985, they opened the Strawberry Fields portion of the park to kind of commemorate his memory. But it's a pretty interesting story also too. Roberta Flack was one of his neighbors, and she said that she could hear him playing music at night, and that she remembered hearing one specific song where she's like, whoa, this is a pretty amazing song. She couldn't make out the words though, and it wasn't until she heard the song Imagine on the radio that she realized, like, yo, I've been listening to this guy write Imagine in his house this whole time. It's pretty cool. So you get these cool little stories about the artists and stuff that live in this area. I think the beautiful thing about John Lennon's story is that, to me, it shows what it is to be a New Yorker. New York is nothing as a city if it's not open. It has to be, because that's what brings everything. And people, other cities and other places like to claim how, true they are. If they have been 10 generations here, all that crap. Not New York. You could be a New Yorker. John Lennon was a New Yorker. Half of a big part of the, one of the most famous parks in the world was named after him, and he wasn't even from here. He's from Liverpool, England. But that's what's so cool about this place. There's a really great quote by a man named E.B. White. He says, "Natives gave New York its solidity and continuity. Commuters give it its tidal restlessness, but settlers give it passion." And that's what I think makes New York special, is that passion of New York. And it comes from other places too. It's not something that comes out of the ground or the water here. It comes from Liverpool, it comes from China, Italy, Oklahoma, Florida, Kansas, wherever. But that's the cool thing, it has to be open, because that's how New York keeps kind of refreshing itself, and that's why New York represents the entire world. So it's a pretty cool thing. And that's also what builds places like the park. That energy of the city is what naturally, kind of organically sprouts up things like the park. I told you how the park came from all the energy and the influx of people that were coming here. Same thing with just about everything in this city. Well, anyways, I think I've rambled enough. We really covered a good chunk of the park. That was a pretty good tour, I think. Right, Phil? What do you think?
Well, yeah.
I think I'm going to go get a hot dog, get Phil a hot dog, and we're going to hang out here in the park. Go try to start a band and make some money, more money, I don't know. But that being said, I keep saying that being said. Someone pointed this out to me earlier, that I say that being said a lot. I'm going to try to stop, all right? But this is all off the cuff. Another thing, if you're going to start correcting like my facts and stuff, hey, I'm doing this all off the top of my head. I'd like to see any of you guys try that. So cut me some slack. I'm trying here. There are certain things that I may like mix up, whatever, but most of this is pretty on point. Anyways, please follow and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, so me and Phil can get that trip to Coachella. We get that paid trip to Coachella or whatever people want to see on there. And subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. That's huge for me. I'm trying to grow this channel and try to do more different, unique stuff. And go figure. People will talk to a guy who's got 10,000 subscribers more than they will to a guy who's got 100 subscribers. So I'm trying to get there. But yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. We just saw Central Park. This is the Central Park. You got to see it with someone who knows more about it than, I don't know, 99.9% of the people in this city. So you're welcome. I'm kidding. I'm not trying to be a jerk or whatever. I'm just messing with you. I don't know. I've been rambling. If you want, watch the video over again, slow it down so you could hear me and make more sense of it. But yeah, all right. See you later. Sick.